all aboard the Spooky Time Junction. My name's Snorkel.
That was a lot of ear rape during that intro.
Apologize. I opened a box of cookies.
Welcome to our podcast.
I apologize.
So, our first topic, I guess, is gonna be Unsolved Murders. So, our first one is called, get out of the way, is called the Black Dahlia. So, what have you heard about this case, Snorful?
I don't remember anything from it, but I know I've heard it before.
Okay. So, basically, the gist of it is the body of Elizabeth Short covered in a field in Los Angeles, Leimert Park. I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. January 15th, 1947 is who died and when they died and where they died. So, no disrespect, man. Because it is about murder.
Yes.
So, what I've gathered from the article is that her body was basically, okay, so I'm just going to read the part of the article. On January 15th, 1947, the dismembered body of a woman was discovered in a vacant lot in Leimert Park in Los Angeles. I cannot say the name of that park. Goodness gracious. I think it's Leimert. So surreal was the scene that the woman who discovered the body, Betty Bersinger, probably butchered that.
Sounds right.
Intentionally thought that she had come upon a severed mannequin. The body was completely drained of blood and had seemingly been washed, and the face had been slashed from the mouth to ear. The upper and lower parts of the body were placed a foot away from each other and reposed. The hands were placed over the head and the elbows bent and the legs spread. The intestines were tucked under her butt, basically. But the article says buttocks, so I think it's written by like a British person.
Well, some people say that to sound more sophisticated.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it just sounds weird.
Yeah, I guess so.
If you want to sound more sophisticated, call it a gluteus maximus. And so after the authorities were called, the body was identified as Elizabeth Short, later known as the Black Dahlia, a 22-year-old aspiring actress who had been dating a married salesman. 6 days after the gruesome discovery, on January 21st, the editor of the Los Angeles Examiner, James Richardson, received an anonymous call. The caller told Richardson that to expect souvenirs. On January 24th, a curious envelope was discovered by the U.S. Postal Service worker. I can't read. The envelope was addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. The letter contained Short's birth certificate photos, and other personal belongings. Creepy. On January 26th, another letter came. In it said, Here it is, turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. How did I find out police? That is not a sentence, but that's what it says in the article. Black Dahlia Avenger. Had my phone at police, Black Dahlia Avenger. The note included the location of where the killer would supposedly show up. The police waited patiently, but to their dismay, the killer never showed. That same day, another note was sent. Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified. Over the years, I cannot read. Over the years, the police have questioned countless suspects and confessed to Black Dahlia killers. However, to this day, the Black Dahlia's murderer has not been found, and remains one of the most baffling unsolved murder cases in history. Your thoughts, Snorful?
I don't know how to feel. Like, that sounds cool. Well, not cool, but you know what I mean.
Like, the way that they, like, drained the blood and then there was, like, no evidence of any blood anywhere else.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. Well,
yeah.
Of course we find this kind of stuff interesting because we have a podcast about it.
Yeah, I guess so. I was gonna say something, but I didn't have anything to follow it, so I'm just gonna not.
No, like, say it.
I was gonna say that's pretty cool, but then I had nothing to follow it, and it would... Ow! It would just be an awkward silence.
Well, I mean, that could have just been your full statement.
Okay, well...
And then I have another one called the Icebox Murders.
I think I've heard that one, too.
The people involved were Fred C. Rogers and his wife, Edwina Harmon Rogers. Probably butchered her name, too.
It's okay.
So... Oh, well. So, about this case... On June 23rd, 1965, Houston patrolmen paid a standard visit to the house of the elderly couple, Fred and Edwina Rogers. To their surprise, they found the house empty and were probably on their way out when one of them decided to check the fridge. Charles Bullock? Well, I think is how you said that. One of the patrolmen present that day recalled the scene. And then this is a quote from him. Opened up a refrigerator and seen nothing but meat stacked in it. My partner standing next to me made the comment that it looked like somebody had butchered a hog. We didn't know it was a body until we got ready to close the refrigerator and we could see the head down in the bottom of the vegetable bin. So, that's nice.
It makes me feel safe that the police didn't realize that there was a body there until they saw the head.
Yep. And then, and attached to the article are some pictures that I've captioned, so I'm going to read that as well. Fred and Edwina Rogers were dismembered and found in the refrigerator in their home on June 23rd, 1965. Interesting.
So this was in 1965?
Yes. It kind of, and all of these that we're talking about are unsolved. So.
It's kind of crazy how that stuff would happen. What fridge, like, I might have dismissed this, but like, where was the fridge?
Just like in their house.
In the killer's house or in their own house?
In their own house.
Okay, because I think they would have just been like really stupid if they didn't realize.
If they were at a friend's house and they're like, oh, this murder is unsolved.
Yeah. I wonder who done it.
I don't know. So, yeah. So police investigated and discovered that Fred, 81, and Edna, 72, had actually been killed a week before they were placed in the refrigerator.
Oh.
So, this segment, I'm gonna pick this segment up after I Okay, so picking back up. Edwinda had been brutally beaten and then shot, while Fred had his head crushed and his insides were later flushed down the toilet.
That's a not very good way to go.
Yeah. Like, imagine just, like, being murdered and then them flushing your insides down the toilet. I'd hate to have to unclog that toilet.
Yeah. Them long intestines.
Yep. And the killer was never found, but a prime suspect was and still is the elderly couple's son, Charles, who was 43 years old at the time. No one could ever find him. He disappeared without a trace. However, recently, two historians, Hugh and Martha Gardiner, I think is how you say that, have declared that they have cracked the icebox murder case wide open. I thought that article ended there for a second, but it was just an ad in the way.
Oh.
So there's more, but you can say what you were gonna say.
I said, haha, crack open, because you get an icebox.
Oh. According to the Gardeners, Charles, who was a geophysicist,
Yeah.
was physically and emotionally abused by his parents from a young age. His parents lived in the house that was owned by Charles and constantly took out loans in his name. Tired of being constantly abused, Charles supposedly killed them. When he fled to Mexico, it is believed as soon as he made his way down to South America, where he continued working as a geophysicist. And then there's a picture and a new murder. So that's nice.
Continue.
Okay, so the next murder, if you don't have anything to say about the previous one.
Not really. Like, I'm just kind of listening to that because it was interesting. Like, I didn't like it, but it was interesting that the killer flushed his insides down the toilet.
Yeah.
It's gonna be horrible for that whoever unclogged the toilet to dig out his
intestines. Yeah. That would be horrible. I'd hate to have that job.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next murder mystery, I suppose, is the murder of room 1046.
Who? Who was it that was whatever murdered?
In the last one or in this one?
In this one. I didn't hear
Okay, so the man who signed the hotel's register was Ronald T. Owen. When he checked into his hotel, that says president, on January 2nd, 1935. So, on January 2nd, 1935, a man checked into room 1046 at the Hotel President in Kansas City. His name, according to the hotel roster, was Ronald T. Owen, and his home address was in Los Angeles. He had a cauliflower ear. I think that says cauliflower. I don't know. Brown. I'm not sure how to say it. I think that's what it says though. Brown hair and a horizontal scar on his scalp. He had no luggage except for a hairbrush and a comb and toothpaste. That same day that Owen checked in at the hotel, a maid stopped by his room, according to her. Owen seemed frightened. The blinds were shut tight, and the room's only source of light came from a small lamp. After the maid was done cleaning the room, Owen asked her to leave the door unlocked because he was expecting a friend. Later, when the maid returned with fresh towels, she saw a note on the dresser that said, "Dawn, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait." The next morning, the maid returned to the room. It was locked from the outside, so she assumed that Owen had gone out. However, to her surprise, Owen was in the room, meaning that someone else had stopped by previously and locked Owen in. Just like the previous night, Owen was sitting in the dark. Then a phone rang. Owen answered it and said, "No, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast." The same day, a motorist named Robert Lane picked up a man near the hotel president. The man apparently had told Lane that he was going to kill someone tomorrow later on. That made no sense because I was supposed to pause. That he was going to kill someone. Later on, Lane... I can't read, hold on. The man apparently told Lane that he was going to kill someone tomorrow. Later on, Lane identified the stranger he had picked up as Owen. There we go. That last time I read that sentence correctly. And that night, when the maid returned to the room with fresh towels, she was turned away by a gruff-sounding man. The next morning, the hotel's staff noticed that the telephone in the room was off the hook. A bellboy was sent up to the room, but he discovered Owen lying in a puddle of blood. It was obvious that Owen had been tortured. When the police asked Owen who did this to him, he answered nobody. His wounds, according to him, were the result of him falling against the bathtub. Mysteriously, his clothes were missing. Why would you take someone's clothes? I don't understand that.
Maybe you think they're fashionable.
You want to wear them for yourself. They're just your size.
Maybe you're like, I want these clothes, but I don't have any money, so I'll have to kill this man for them.
Okay. When the police tried to confirm Owen's identity, they found that Ronald T. Owen did not exist. Owen, who had by now become John Doe, died in the hospital and was to be buried in the Potter's Field. However, an anonymous call came asking for the burial to be postponed until funds for a proper funeral were wired. 13 flowers were sent for the funeral, and signs were signed. Love forever, Lois. In 1936, a woman read about the case and thought that Owen looked a lot like her friend's missing son, Artemis Ogletree? I think is how you say that. Ogletree's mother confirmed that the man from room 1064 was indeed her son, but the case wasn't able to progress any further. Police never found the mysterious Dawn, and they could never trace the mysterious woman named Lois who funded the funeral and sent the flowers. Spooky. It's very spooky.
Very spooky.
Yeah. And so the next one that I have, and probably the final one that I have, is the Haw Mills murder.
Right.
So that's fun. So on September 16th, 1922, two teenage lovers were out on a stroll when they discovered the bodies of a man and a woman lying under a crabapple tree. Both the man and the woman were dead. The man was shot once and the woman 3 times. The bodies had been posed. Both the man's and the woman's feet were pointing towards the apple tree, and the man's hand was on the woman's neck and hers on his knee. The man's card was propped against his foot, and a hat concealed the man's head. A scarf was wrapped around the woman's neck. It was later discovered that the woman's tongue had been cut out. torn love letters were scattered all around them. The bodies were those of revered Edward Wheeler Hall and Eleanor Renard Mills. I'm probably butchered that middle name. I'm sorry. The two had been lovers, but their affair was a complicated one. Mills was married to the church's janitor, and Hall was married to a wealthy woman named Frances Stevens Hall, the main murder suspect. The crime scene was contaminated by souvenir hunters? The crime scene was contaminated by souvenir hunters, and thus the police had nothing solid to go on until Jane Gibson, better known as the Pig Woman, came forward. She was a hog farmer who lived near the crime scene. According to her, the night of September 14th, she saw 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, in her cornfield. Gibson heard a woman yell, explain these letters, gunshots, and then the woman shrieking, "Henry." The case was dismissed and no one was charged, but then 4 years later a maid that had previously served the Halls confessed that the reverend wanted to annul his marriage and basically he wanted to get in divorce and marry Mills. The way they worded that is so weird.
Yeah.
The Pig Woman was once again called in to testify, but her testimony was deemed inaccurate. It didn't help that Gibson's mother, who sat in the front row, kept mumbling "liar, liar" throughout the testimony, thus further ruining Gibson's credibility. Miss Hall and her brothers Henry and William were acquitted.
Interesting.
Yes, very. So,
I like this case, more than the other ones. Maybe that's just me though.
I don't know. They all seem interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, the last one of my Unsolved Murders that I've found is called Charles Morgan and Green Eyes. So, I don't know. So, the prominent Tuscan escrow agent Charles or Chuck Morgan left his house as usual on March 22nd, 1977, but did not return for 3 days. When he did return, he could not speak because as he explained to his bewildered wife, his throat was painted with a hallucinogenic drug that could kill him or make him go mad. He also confessed to being a U.S. Treasury agent. It took Morgan a week to recover, but only 2 months after his first disappearance, Morgan vanished once again. 9 days later, his wife received a mysterious call from an anonymous woman who said Chuck is all right. Elastics 12, 1-8. I probably said that wrong. 2 days later, Morgan's body was discovered in the desert. He had been shot in the back of the head, the murder weapon, his own gun. According to the sheriff's department, Morgan's death was suicide, but if it was indeed suicide, why did Morgan wear a bulletproof vest, and why did he carry a knife and holster in his belt? To complicate matters further still, some strange objects were found in Morgan's car parked near the crime scene. The curious objects included ammunition, weapons, a CB radio, and one of Morgan's teeth wrapped in a handkerchief.
Ew.
The tooth thing is kind of a little bit weird.
Yeah. Well, no dirt.
A $2 bill was also found clipped to Morgan's underwear. The bill had a number of Spanish surnames scribbled on it, as well as a map of the area. All on a $2 bill. 2 days after Morgan's body was discovered, an anonymous woman called the Pima Country Sheriff's Department. She referred to herself as Green Eyes and confessed that she was the anonymous woman who had called Morgan's wife previously. She said that before Morgan's death, she had met him in a motel where he had shown her a suitcase full of cash. There was supposedly a contract, but on Morgan's life. There was supposedly a contract out on Morgan's life, but the hitman had arranged a deal for his life to be saved. Can't read, but I tried. No suspects were ever found, but it is believed that the mafia was involved, as Morgan supposedly carried out escrow work for the mafia and had recently testified in a secret investigation to illegal activity. Nevertheless, Morgan's killing remains one of the most baffling unsolved murder cases in recent American history.
Weird.
Yep, so that's all mine that I have.
The teeth thing caught me off guard.
Yeah. Wait, why would you rip out one of your teeth?
My teeth.
Oh no.
They stole my teeth and put it in a plastic bag. Alright. Let me just pull up the thing again.
Okay, so now we're on the snorkel stuff that she had found.
I found one thing.
Also, my hand fell asleep.
Because I wanted to look for a specific case, and poor you. Okay, so, this is the shark arm case, and I'm just gonna read the thing, the Wikipedia article. Sorry if my sniffling is prominent. Okay, the shark arm case refers to a series of incidents that began in Sydney, Australia on the 21st of April, 1935, when a human arm was regurgitated by a captive 3.5 meter tiger shark, subsequently leading to a murder investigation. The tiger shark had been caught 3 kilometers, 1.9 miles from the suburb of Coogee in mid-April. I have no idea if I pronounce it. It's either Coogee or Coogee. In mid-April, and transferred to the Coogee aquarium baths, where it was put on public display. Within a week, the fish became ill and vomited in front of a small crowd, leaving left forearm of a man bearing a distinctive tattoo floating. Before it was captured, the tiger shark had devoured. It was this smaller shark that had originally swallowed the fingerprints lifted from the hand identified the arm was that of former boxer and small-time criminal Jim Smith, born in England, who had been missing since the 7th of April, 1935. Smith's arm and tattoo were also positively identified by his wife Gladys and his brother. Smith led a high-risk lifestyle as he was also a police informer. Examination revealed that the limb had been severed with a knife, which led to a murder investigation. The aquarium owners killed the shark and gutted it, hampering police investigation. Let me breathe. Okay.
Discord's cutting out so bad.
So glitchy.
Yeah, it's glitching a bit.
They're glitching for me, you know.
Yeah, true. It's fine.
Yeah. It's whatever. Early inquiries correctly led police to a Sydney businessman named Reginald William Lloyd Holmes. Holmes was a fraudster and smuggler. I like the word fraudster.
I was gonna say his name 10 times fast.
Reginald William Lloyd Holmes.
Yeah.
Holmes was a fraudster and smuggler who ran a successful family boat building business at Lavender Bay, New South Wales. Holmes had employed Smith to work insurance scams, including one in 1934, which was an over-insured pleasure cruiser named Fat Pat, was sunk near Terrigal, New South Wales. Shortly afterwards, the pair began a racket with Patrick Brady. I lost my place. A convicted forger and ex-servant with specimen. Specimen.
Specimen.
Oh, I can't read.
Careful, you're starting to read like me.
Yeah. Specimen signatures from Holmes' friends and clients proved by the boat builder would forge checks for a small amounts against their bank accounts that he and Smith had then cashed. Police were later able to establish that he was blackmailing the wealthy Reginald Holmes. Jim Smith was last seen drinking at Patrick Brady's Cecil Hotel in the southern Sydney suburb of on the 7th of April 1935, after telling his wife that he was going. Patrick Brady had rented a small cottage in Tulum, Cronulla, at the time Jim Smith went missing. Police alleged that Smith was murdered at this cottage. Port hacking in Gunnamatta Bay were searched by the Navy and the Air Force, but the rest of Smith's body was never. This caused problems for the prosecution when Brady was eventually brought. Patrick Brady was arrested on 16th of May and charged with the murder. A taxi driver testified that he had taken Patrick Brady to Holmes' address at 3 Bayview Street, McMahon's Point, New South. On the day Smith had gone missing, and that he was disheveled, he had a hand in his, and he wouldn't take it out. It was clear that he was frightened. Initially, Holmes denied any association with Patrick Brady, but 4 days later, on the 20th of May, 1935, the businessman went into his shed and attempted suicide by shooting himself in the head with a .32 caliber pistol. However, the bullet flattened against the bone of his forehead, and he was merely stunned. Wow. Revived after falling into the... Huh?
I said, ouch.
Yeah, but like, it said that he was only stunned. Ouch for the bullet.
Ouch for the bullet, totally.
Revived after falling into the water, he crawled into his speedboat and led 2 police launches on a chase around Sydney Harbor for several hours until he was finally caught and taken. In early June 1935, Reginald Holmes decided to cooperate with the police investigating them. He told Detective Sergeant Frank Matthews that Patrick Brady had killed Jim, dismembered his body, and stowed it in, that he claimed had then been thrown into the... He then claimed Patrick Brady had come into his severed arm and threatened Holmes with murder if he did not receive £500. Holmes also admitted that after Brady had left, he traveled to the Sydney coastal suburb of Maribua and discarded Smith's arms in the... I'm just going to stop there because this is going on. And you can stop with your recording right now.
Okay.
Oh.
Outro time. Yay!
Oh, we're done.
We're done.
Cool.
Yay! Shortest podcast ever.
Be your stop. Oh, frick.
Dishes available? Don't forget you have reached the session.
Get off the train.
Get off our train.
Easy's your 5 warning.
Get off the train before we drive off the cliff.
Yeah, the trainer will force off the train.
What she said.
Is that our outro?
Yeah, that's gonna be our outro.
It's very friendly, though.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, Luigi time.
Wait. I know this is nothing about the Spooky Time Junction podcast. We went to Dave and Buster's. Me and my dad went to Dave and Buster's today, and they had a game that was Mario Kart, but like an arcade game. It was pretty. And I played as Waluigi twice, and I beat him.
That's nice.
We'll have a 30-minute podcast.
Yeah, just like a really short podcast. Or I guess we could do like a live thing. But I don't really.
Lives.
Yeah, but I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, me either.
Because then it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
To add in the music. Because you can't just add it in post. You have to add it like during. And we can't have random moments of pausing in our sentences. I also need to get inspired and draw some new background art for this episode of our podcast.
Because my persona is now
different. So
he's dead.
the old Snorfel's dead.
Yes.
Like in every movie when the character gets replaced by a clone, the old me's dead.
Like a new actor that plays a character.
Yes, like 5 different Spider-Men. The old Spidey's dead.
We don't talk about him.
Yeah, we don't talk about the Spidey in between Spider-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming. We don't talk about the Amazing Spider-Man. The actor is he who shall not be named.
So we're done with the podcast, so I'm going to go eat.
I'm gonna go make cereal, because that's all I know how to make. Goodbye. I cut her off. Oh well.